So we're on Daf Lamed Daled in Beitsa. We're about halfway down the page. The Mishnah had said earlier that you can't put these ceramic tiles in a fire on Yom Tov because one of the pshatim of Rabbi Yochanan was because you're like fixing up the tile. It's a new tile, and by putting it in the fire you strengthen it. Now we have a Beitsa that has to do with Shabbos, but at the very end we discuss a similar concept that we say people who are putting even one thing on the fire could be the same problem. If it's a new pot, it could be like fixing the pot, strengthening the pot, because if it's a new pot and now you're applying a high degree of heat to it through the fire, you're strengthening it, so it's for sure Asur Midrabanan, just like on Yom Tov, because you're fixing up the pot, making it stronger, and also it may even be a deraisa. The lashon of the Beitsa was chayiv, so it sounds like a deraisa, but the lashon of Reish Lakish, who's explaining it, sounds like they talked about it because of the same problem as Ra'afim, where there was only an Isser D'Rabbanan, so it's not clear, and then we're waiting to see in Rashi the explanation. So let's see the Rashi in the second wide line of Rashi, not the very, very wide lines, the mid-sized lines of Rashi, right underneath the Gemora.
Okay, let's see.
Kedera Chadasha Askinan. Reish Lakish said we're talking here, just like in the Mishnah of Beitsa, we're talking about these new tiles, these new ceramic tiles that by putting them in the fire you make a certain tikkun.
Okay.
So here he says we're also talking about, even if it's an empty pot that you put on the fire, the Beitsa is saying chayiv for the same kind of a reason. Because we're talking about a new pot. Let's see how Rashi explains that.
Okay, so we talk about a new pot. Shenosim oison vekanis. Al ha'or chasma. That you put an empty pot on the fire. Chasma means to.
It's carnies.
Shall we read it again?
It's carnies.
What? Rekanis?
Oh, red empty.
Empty. Because shenosim also rekanis al ha'or. That you put the empty pot on the fire, chasma means to burn.
If you look up top, when there were two reasons given, two versions of Rabbi Yochanan's shot in the Mishnah, why you can't put the ceramic tiles on. One said levadkan, one said lechasman. Right at the top of the page, the second line, it says sarik lechasman. Top of the page, you see that?
Yeah.
The second line, sarik lechasman. That was the Ikeda Amri Amri law in Rabbi Yochanan, right? Why are you not allowed to put the ceramic tiles in the fire on Yom Tov? One pshat says sarik levadkan, and one pshat said sarik lechasman.
Yeah.
Rashi just quoting that. What did lechasman mean up there?
To harden.
That's basically how Rashi learned, correct. So since it's a new ceramic kli, and by putting it in hot fire, you strengthen it. That's called the chasma. So the Reish Lakish says in the Beitsa that talks about putting an empty pot on the fire being a problem, it's for the same reason that we mentioned earlier, the chasma. Ends up strengthening and hardening the pot.
Yeah.
So what does that do? Next Rashi. No. At the third mid-sized line of Rashi's, underneath the Gemora. Libun.
Libun rafim nagubah. Because of the heating of the tiles, winding of the tiles, nagubah means it's touching.
They touched it.
They touched it.
They touched it would imply the Rabbanan affected this law. Meaning they paskin a certain thing based on this consideration. What does that mean?
It's Gezer itself, She'asur L'Lavan Ru'afim, that they also the tiles, to heat it, make the tiles wide, means
Right.
heating up very high temperatures. No Guba Gamazur. And they also
touched upon this.
forbade, right?
So they forbade it, that's for sure. But the Beitsa says it's chayiv. It says kulan chayavim. So either it means lav dafka, and this one's going to be just asur midrabanan, but all the rest are chayiv deraisa. Or it means that just like the rabbanan were worried about the same kind of a thing on Yom Tov, but on Yom Tov you're allowed to cook. So the only thing they could tell you is don't do it midrabanan because you're making a tikkun in the kli. But on Shabbos, when you're not allowed to cook, and by putting the new pot on the fire, there the tikkun kli could be a deraisa. Right? We said yesterday that if you apply heat to a substance and you make it better, more meshubach, that's bishul. Right? The Mishnah who was quoting the Rambam said that's called bishul. So perhaps that's what it means here as well. Even though Rashi is a little bit ambiguous, Rashi makes it sound like it's midrabanan, but again, the lashon of the Beitsa was chayiv. So I don't know if Rashi's saying that's lav dafka chayiv and it just means asur midrabanan, but you could say that. I mean, that's what the word naguba might mean. They affected it, midrabanan, but it's really not asur midraisa. Or they affected it, meaning they realized it's the same problem. So on Yom Tov, when you're allowed to cook, we couldn't tell you it's an isur deraisa because you're cooking. What's wrong with cooking? You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. But on Shabbos, there we can say chayiv because their cooking's an asur isur midaraisa. So possibly that's the pshat. Of course, there's one other pshat you could say. If you're not going to talk about bishul, you could just say tikkun kli, which on Shabbos is maybe the isur of makeh b'patish even. Right? Putting the final touches on a kli is not called makeh b'patish. So perhaps that's what he means. Just like on Yom Tov where they said it's asur midrabanan because of tikkun kli, but on Shabbos it'll be asur because of makeh b'patish. It'll be chayiv. Maybe that's what Rashi means, but it's not clear. Definitely not clear.
What says makeh b'patish? Why makeh b'patish?
Why would it be that on Shabbos and not on Yom Tov?
Because if you're allowed to do a malacha for the sake of cooking on Yom Tov, so we can't really talk. We can't talk to you about a malacha if you're allowed to do malachas for cooking. We can talk about Isur and Durabanan. We can say, look, Midrabanan we told you not to make kalim, not even to make a tikkun in a kli. So that's why they put their foot down. But when we talk about Shabbos, we can already talk about the malacha again. Makeh b'patish is what?
Hammering it, finishing it up.
That's in that particular case. The ma'av malacha was a case of where he was hammering something, but that's not. It doesn't matter. That's not the normal case of makeh b'patish. It doesn't have to do with the hammer. It has to do with the tikkun. It's the finalization of a kli. The last step in making something into a kli.
That's makeh b'patish.
That's makeh b'patish. Finishing off a kli, basically. You're doing the last touches to make it into a kli. So even if it's not a big tikkun, but it's the final thing that made it into a kli, sometimes the Gemora says even a small little thing that is the last step in making something into a kli could be called makeh b'patish as well. So it's very possible that that's what's going on here, because that's basically what we're saying. You have a new pot, except it needs to be hardened, and this, by putting it on the fire, now you harden it, and that's it. Now it's a good pot. Now you can use it for a long period of time as a proper pot that will last for a long time. So that could be makeh b'patish. Could be the last step in making it into a kli is by hardening it up, strengthening it up. Rashi leaves it a bit open-ended, so I can't really say for sure in Rashi. It sounds in Rashi like it's still only the midrabanan, but again, the lashon of the Beitsa said chayiv. So unless you learn that Reish Lakish is coming to say Lav Dafka, it's not really Chayiv in that particular case. It's only Asur Midrabanan, like the Ra'afim. So basically, you have to say the Brisa didn't really mean what it said, which is always less preferable than saying it did mean it. What's the comparison in Ra'afim? The comparison is that just like in Ra'afim, according to the second pshat in Ra'afim, it's us because of Tikkun Kli, and even over there it's the Rabbanan, but here we could say it's even Deraisa.
So it's a bit like putting something into a kiln.
Right.
That's what they're talking about, right?
I think it's the same effect. That's what people today, I know my brother and sister, even my mother, I think at one point used to make pottery, and I remember they always talked about putting it in the kiln. I never actually did it with them, but I know that was always the final step to making it into
So
a
they're
proper.
talking about a cheresh here?
Kli Cheres, yes, I believe it's Kli Cheres. I don't know if Rashi said it before, but I think we said Ra'afim are Cheres. Let's see. Back in the Mishnah, do we say it? Never actually said
No,
it, but I believe that's the shot.
Because if it's a metal pot, it's not likely to...
Yeah. I don't really see anyone saying it directly, but to me that's the only shot that really makes sense. If we're talking about ceramic, I mean, that's the way if you remember, I was always mentioning ceramic tiles. Even today in modern Hebrew, Ra'afim, I think, refers to those red tiles you see on the slanted roofs on certain Israeli houses.
The Gemora is basically talking about the two explanations of the tile. The one is that it might crack, that's the animal thing, and the other is hardening the tile, and it's this example, right?
Well,
It
again,
seems to be,
in regards to the animal, that was a possibility, but it wasn't the conclusion of the Gemora. It seemed that Rabbi Yirmiyah did not accept that pshat.
right, he said, no.
So the reason why I asked my question, because I learned the second pshat. And when we opened up the Shulchan Aruch, we saw that the majority of poskim say it's mutter,
Right.
seem to be going with that second pshat. So even though there is a first pshat, but I think the Gemora has drifted away from the first pshat, personally. In any event, certainly both are possible. And in the case of the animal, we were entertaining the notion, we were asking the question, and Rabbi Yirmiyah said he learned the other way, which in Shulchan Aruch seemed to go with that pshat as well. And now I think we're only going with that pshat in this new Gemora.
So we're going like the...
Seems to be going like the second pshat, like it says, like Rashi says, l'chasman. That's the second pshat.
First pshat is weak, right?
No, I don't know. I mean, I hear the problem. We said each one has a certain weakness and a certain strength. The first problem I understand better in a way because there's a real problem of tircha lo l'tzorich if it ends up breaking. Even though it's a chashash, it may not break, it might yes break, we don't know. But if it does happen, there's definitely tircha shel l'tzorich. Whereas the other case where you're just strengthening the pot, first of all, to say, that's for sure going to happen, I guess, it does happen, but...
well, if you put a clay ferris in a kiln or on a fire, it will happen.
Correct. That's correct. I'm not arguing with the I think scientifically it certainly helps it to be strengthened, but if that's enough to call it a tikkun kli, I don't know. Maybe that's part of the question.
We had this once before with a plate.
But that was in Hilchos Tsama. That was in Hilchos Tsama.
They considered it's Tsama once it's completed, and the other version was once it's put in a kiln. Well, when it's gone.
There are people who use it without it, so that might be. In Hilchos Tsama, we said maybe it's already finished kli before that, and then we said it depends maybe on the type of people you're talking about, in the village and this.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That was also in Hilchos Tsama. Maybe here it's different. Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Yom Tov. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's the same kind of question. Does that last step of hardening the kli is that really the final part of making it into a kli? Or it's already a kli. Just hardening it up is. Whether that's called a real tikkun, maybe there's a focus if that's called a real tikkun. Tosos, the top Tosos says something interesting, which again, I don't know if we poskim like this Tosos, but certainly Tosos is talking halacha l'maisa, which is for refreshing. You see that that interested them as much as the other parts of the learning, which are more theoretical. Tosos says some people learn from our sugya that on Yom Tov even you can't cook with a new pot. Because you might have the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Tosos says it's not true. He doesn't agree with these people. And of course, when Tosos says there are some people, he means just like Tosos is a Rishon, the people he's quoting are proper Rishonim. So it basically ends up being a Maklokas Rishonim. But Tosos often is a stronger opinion. And he's saying it's not true. Why did Tosos say it's not true? Our Gemora definitely says a new pot is a problem. What could you say? Because we were talking about a new pot that was empty.
Now it goes to where it's full.
Tosos says normally people don't put an empty pot on the fire. They fill up a pot with food and then they put it on the fire. So if that's what we're talking, that's the normal time. I'd like to use a new pot, not an empty pot, but a full pot. So then I'll never have the problem, according to Tosfos, because the only problem you ever have is basically, I guess you could say, like Shabbatai was comparing it to a kiln, when you're treating the kli with hot fire as if it's in a kiln. And Tosfos claims that only happens when it's empty. Take an empty pot and put it on the fire, it's going to affect the...
It's going to burn the thing.
It's going to make it stronger, like Tosos was, like the Gemora was saying, it makes it stronger. It's going to affect the molecular structure of the kli. But if it's full of a liquid, then basically it never gets to the point of being like in a kiln. Because like when you put something in a kiln, you don't put it filled with liquid.
I thought the pots we use today is completely different pots.
What?
The pots we have today are completely finished.
Already. Yeah, probably anyways. Today, if you get a pot, even a pottery pot, which I don't even know that many people use a pottery pot anymore. Most people use a metal pot. But even if you do want to use a pottery pot, let's say to serve, sometimes people have it for serving, a serving dish. But you're right, when you buy it from the store, usually they have put it in a kiln because of this effect of hardening it. So probably would not apply even without Tosfos' Chiddush, that if it's full of a liquid, it doesn't affect the pot the same way when it says when it's empty. And the Gemora is only saying there's a problem when it's empty. So Tosfos is saying if it's full of liquid, it's full of food, it's not going to be a problem. We were saying, look, even if it's empty, the truth is our pots are already put in a kiln. So basically our pots would not be considered new in that sense. When the Gemora talks about a new pot, it means one that hasn't yet been put in the fire. Apparently. It's like a pot, pottery pot when you have to put in the kiln. But it's like you're saying. I think Sruli's right. Most of if you go into a store and you buy some kind of a pottery pot or something to hold the food that's made out of pottery, it's almost always been in a kiln already. That's just the normal way of processing pottery in our day and age. So probably you wouldn't have to worry about it for the other reason, which is that it's already been through the fire. So either way, in our day and age, I don't think we have to worry about this halacha. And the truth is, just practically speaking, we hardly ever deal with putting a real pottery pot on the fire in our day and age. So it's another reason why we probably don't have to worry about this.
We use gas.
Yeah, but also most of our pots are made out of metal. And if I'm right, then this only applies to pottery pots, not metal pots.
So what's the question Tosfos had in Gemora?
There's some people, he's quoting poskim in his time, right? Yeah. Tosfos lived in a time when there were, just like today, there's different poskim in Tosfos' time, there are also different poskim. Tosfos is aware of certain poskim who said, based on our Gemora, that a person should be careful on Yom Tov from cooking in a new pot. That's what our Gemora seems to say, cooking in a new pot is problematic. Tosfos says no. If you're Medayik Arsugi, it was only talking about an empty pot. Right? Rashi mentioned that a few times, Rekanit.
Only problem of an empty pot.
And probably, like Tosfos says, Rashi said that for a reason. Why did Rashi say that? Because the only time you really get a tikkun of hardening the kli is when it's empty. That's what Tosfos says also. The truth is, whether or not it's applicable in our day and age, but at least Tosfos is extremely useful in understanding why Rashi had to keep talking about an empty pot. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the Gemora asked the question also, what did the guy do? He put a pot on the fire. It was an empty pot. What did he do? So from that, you also know we're talking about an empty pot, right?
Tosfos seems to say our Gemora is talking about
He's talking about an empty pot. That's why the Gemora even asked, what did he do? Why is he chayiv? And we had to be HaKodesh is talking about a new pot, like in the Ra'afim case. But I'm saying, even then, Rashi chose to stress as well in the answer that it's like Ra'afim when it's empty. Rashi brought in Rekanis as well then, not just in the kasha, what did he do, it's an empty pot, but even in the answer that it's like Ra'afim, Rashi stressed again that it's Rekanis. Why? Why is Rashi so hung up on this word Rekanis? Because like Tosfos says, that's the only time you're going to have the problem that our Gemora says exists of tikkun kli. If it was full of a liquid or full of some food, then it wouldn't have the same effect on the pot.
The first version, it seems that it is an empty pot.
First version?
Yeah.
Of what?
Of the people that in the Beitsa. One brings the fire.
It's not a first version. I don't know what you mean first version.
Okay, in the Tanya, the first person brings the fire, the second person...
First price, you mean, not the first version.
Yeah, the first price.
Okay. What about the first Beitsa?
One brings the fire, one brings the... One brings the wood, and one brings the...
Pot.
So he puts the empty pot on the fire.
Right.
So he's changing the pot.
Why is he
They
changing?
say that he should be chayiv then, isn't he?
And what's he doing to the pot?
He's hardening it, he's strengthening it.
That's what the Gemora says. In the end of the day, we have to say he's talking about a new pot. To understand what he did wrong, we have to say he was talking about a new pot.
Because someone asked the question, what did he do?
Yeah, just put an empty pot on the fire. What's wrong with putting an empty pot on the fire?
So the Gemora will
I take my empty pot that's in my kitchen and put it on the fire. It didn't do anything. So it says, just like our Mishnah, we had to make a new kimta. We had to specifically say it's talking about a new ra'afim to understand why the Mishnah was usher. So to here, we have to say it's talking about a new pot.
Which is why it's chayiv.
That's why it's for sure usher, and maybe even chayiv. We were giving different reasons why it might even be chayiv on Shabbos. Certainly it's usher midrabban. Like in our Mishnah, there was usher to put the ra'afim that were new in the fire. Here, that's what this price would be telling you. It's also usher to put the new pot on the fire if it's empty.
Tricky.
Like the Gemora is always.
Yeah, very subtle.
The difference is that you have to take an empty pot and fill it up.
Correct.
Now that we learned the whole sugi, it feels like a full pot to me. Although some people might just say it's like smoking pot. Okay. Shall we start the next brisa now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Since Shirley already was reading it, let's give Shirley the chance.
Tanur Banan represents the Beitsa.
Correct.
Tanur Bekiram.
Kiraim.
Bekiram Chadashim.
Aha. Okay, so we know already these are probably made out of ceramic again. And if they're new, we might have that problem that we've had till now with the new ceramic pottery.
Yeah. Harei hein kachol hakelim hanotlin b'chatzer.
Nitalin.
B'chatzer. All kelim that are taken into a chatzer, into a courtyard.
Taken means what?
They're brought.
In other words, which problem are we addressing? This word notel, if you look back on the Mishnah that talked about the twigs and all of that, Rebbe Lezer Omer, notel adam kisem mishit lefanov. Remember that word notel?
Mm-hmm.
To move or pick up.
It's like you're allowed to pick up, you're allowed to move, you're allowed to use, basically.
Used, right?
But the Chiddush is more usually, when that word is used, it's like the word metaltali, which is the idea of moving muksa, or something that's not muksa. So it seems to imply that we're talking now not so much about the problem of the malacha of Shabbos or the malacha of Yom Tov, as we've been talking about in the past few sugyas, but now we're getting on back to the problem of muksa. Right? Are these kalim muksa? I don't know if it's talking about Shabbos or Yom Tov. If you notice, very interesting, it has an asterisk there, at least in my Gemora, which usually means look across to the margin and see what it says there for the footnote, the source of it. It says Tosefta, right? And we know before we were dealing with Tosefta from Shabbos, right? Here it just says Tosefta Paragima. What do you think that means? Which Masechta is that from?
Shabbos?
I don't think so, because before when it was Tosefta from Shabbos, it said Tosefta Shabbos. If it doesn't say Tosefta Shabbos, I have to assume Tosefta just Stam means Tosefta Beitsa. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't have the Tosefta in this particular Gemora. I don't think they put the Tosefta in the back, but yours might have it. If you have me your Gemora for a minute, let me just see if we can find it. Where would it be in the Tosefta if it is?
In the back.
Where?
On the Rosh?
No, do you know what it says? Tosefta what?
On the Beitsa?
It doesn't say Beitsa, that's what we're arguing. Is it Tosefta Shabbos? Like, no, don't look. What does it say?
Perek Gimel.
Perek Gimel. So that's where we'll find it, in Perek Gimel of...
Beitsa.
Yeah. So it doesn't help to say in the back, because there's a lot of prakim in the back. It doesn't help to say Beitsa, because there's a lot of prakim in Beitsa. But if you say it's a Tosef, the Perek Gimel, then I had nowhere to look at least. Not like Mishnah, so we know which Mishnah it is exactly. It's just somewhere in Perek Gimel. Usually after, there we go. See?
Yeah.
Gimel. Here we go. Can you find it? Anywhere there? The one we're looking at? You know what it's talking about? Tanur v'kirayim. You good at looking quickly through stuff? See if you can find it. Here, keep one hand there so you don't lose your place. I'm going to the bathroom.
Would it be in the back there as well? Would it be back there as well?
Back there is, well, what do you mean? Back? Okay. So that was bothering me, that if it's talking about Shabbos, how can that not be muktzah on Shabbos? An oven, my gosh. But if it's talking about Yom Tov, when you're allowed to cook, then there's a different issue, I guess. Now it's the other way around. Of course it's not muktzah, you're allowed to cook.
Even an empty pot.
Maybe it's like an empty oven, so it's a new oven. Maybe that's what we're going to say. Maybe that's how it's connected to this same sugi that we've been learning of Ra'afim, that if the oven, what if the oven itself hasn't been used yet? The minute you start to use it, you're mikazik the oven. So maybe you're not even allowed to pick up the oven because maybe it's muktzah. But it says, no, you're allowed to. So now we have to figure out why. It's talking about a new one. It's talking about an older one, I understand. It's talking about a new one, why wouldn't it be muktzah? It should be the same problem. Like the Ra'afim. Alright, anyhow.
It shouldn't be matzah.
Well, if it's chadashim, it says right in the Beitsa. Tanur v'kirayim chadashim.
Yes.
So we are talking about a new one. And if the Ra'afim get strengthened in the oven, and we had before a pot, even a regular pot that's empty, so an oven also should be the same problem. So how come it's not muktzah? Do we not care about it getting harder or stronger?
We do, don't we?
So why is it nitolim? Why are you allowed to move it? Why is it not muktzah?
Must be matzah Yom Tov.
But we said before the Ra'afim are usher to put in the fire.
Not Yom Tov.
On Yom Tov.
So I'm saying it's matzah.
So here it's not exactly saying you can use it, but by saying you can move it is like saying you can use it, I think, because something you can't use should be muktzah. Like the Ra'afim, let's say. The Ra'afim that are new, that you can't put in the oven, that you can't put in the fire, are they muktzah? Maybe they have a usage without putting them in the fire. Right? Maybe you could just use them as a pot holder. Maybe you don't have to put them in the fire to use them. But an oven, what other usage does it have?
Well, my wife stores books in there.
I hear. Maybe that's the point.
She does.
So maybe tell her that it seems that the Gemora pasuk's like her, because here we have it saying it's not muktzah, but yet it must be muktzah from the point of view of using the oven, because if it's new, well, how can you use it? You're going to be mechazik it. The sarik lachasman.
Yeah.
Alright, so at least we hear the problem. Aval ein.
Sakinas or sheming, you know that too. Spray, right?
What's sachin?
So it's squeeze. Squeeze?
Squeeze? No.
Spread.
Spray?
Anoint.
Anoint.
What we call in Yiddish schmear. Schmear campaign.
So this is a Sakin campaign? Sakin campaign.
Yeah. But I think best to pronounce it sachin with a soft chaf rather than like sakin, like with a hard cuff, it reminds us of the word knife.
Right.
And sakana.
Right.
This is a different word. This comes from the word of when they used to anoint themselves, right? Something they used to do all the time when they came out of a bath, they would anoint themselves. They really were into anointing themselves in the olden
Then
days.
the Afrikaans word for soft is sag.
I guess they are the lost tribe.
It's a Dutch word, German word, sag.
Alright. Well, the Dutch I like, the Germans I don't like, so.
Germans are very efficient people.
Obviously some Germans are nice people, but the Germans in general have done something very terrible to our nation, so I don't like them. Alright, it's a bit prejudicial of me, so excuse me.
You should never buy a German oven.
My father would never buy a Volkswagen. Alright, Ein Sachin Osam Shemen, you're not allowed to anoint them with oil. The Ein,
Sorgtin Oisam Permitlas.
what?
Permitlas?
Matlis?
Matlis.
What's the word before that?
Sorgtin.
Really? I must have gotten to the wrong place. I'm in another place. I have the word Tashim.
Oh, you're back in the Gemora.
Oh! You're in the Tosefta?
Yeah.
Alright, well, it's interesting. Use a different verb there than our Gemora. That can happen, right? You can have a different version of the Tosefta that our Gemoras bring than our Tosefta brings. Alright. But Marina's knew. He knew we're back in.
That's because he didn't know where the Tosefta was.
You never found it?
No, I didn't.
Alright, so we may refer back to that Tosefta. Just the first step I wanted to know, if it's in Beitsa, then it makes more sense to say it's metaltalin on Yom Tov. That's what we're talking about. In any event, okay, so you're not allowed to schmear or tushing, I think also maybe wiping it down. The matlis. Matlis is,
Oh,
yeah, a shmata. So I guess that goes with, I don't know, what are you wiping it down with? You already said you're not allowed to put shaman on it. Maybe if it already has something on it, you're not allowed to buff it down. Tashim maybe is to buff it with a rag. Anyhow, the Ein
Ein Makin Oisam B'Tznai.
Mafigin,
Oisam B'Tznai.
which means what?
Makin means sure. We had this one before, huh?
A little bit. I'm tempted to say it's related to the word pagi. Why do they call the ward where they keep the preemies pagi?
Him.
It's the same root, right? As mefig.
The spice, to put on.
They do talk about this word actually in relationship to spices. They say if you cut something up and you leave it out, it's mefig time. You know where you find this actually in the Chumash? If I'm not mistaken, I think it's in the part where Yaakov Avinu sees Yosef for the first. No, when he hears about Yosef being alive. Remember that part?
Yes.
Remember what it says happened to him? Nobody remembers?
One fell on one leg, one fell on the other leg, but he was busy saying the Shema.
Well, that's when they actually met.
Yeah.
When the brothers came back and said to Yaakov, he's alive,
He said,
what happened to poor Yaakov Avinu? Remember? Anyone?
He fainted.
Basically,
He said, I don't
had
have
a
to
heart
go.
attack of sorts. Just a second, where is it? Here. What pasuk is that? Perik what? No. Memches. Perik Memches. Pasuk Chaflav. No. Chaflav.
Yes.
Memches. Or Memhem. Let's do Memhem. Here. See?
Yeah. For you, but it's not became weak, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it means, to make something weaker. I think Rashi there brings a few examples. Nechlaf libo, it got exchanged, Rashi says. Halach milahamin, it went away from believing. Lo haya libo pone el hadavarim, it's sort of turned away. Lashon mifigin taiman, which like Lashon Mishnah, kamo me'ein hafugos, reichel lo namar. Rashi learns has to do more with exchanging, changing, turning away. It also often means weakened, to be weakened.
What means to change? Does it mean?
Well, Rashi says he changed from believing. At that point, he stopped believing them. For a second, he stopped believing that it could be true. He didn't believe it was true that he was alive. It's so fantastic to think after 22 years that Yosef's alive. Okay, so ein mafigin osam betzonein. What's sonein?
Thirst.
Huh?
Thirst.
No.
Sonein is reddish.
No, that's snow, actually. Sonein is from the word sina. You know what sina means?
Hard. Too hard?
No, that's sinews with an ayin, but sina with a hay on the end means coldness. They say that akol b'idei shemayim chutz mitzinim pachim. Everything's in shemayim except for coldness, which means if you go outside without proper tire in the cold, it's your fault for getting sick, not Hashem's fault. So tsina with a hay on the end means cold. Mayim tsonanim. You ever heard of that? Mayim tsonanim? Cold water. So that's what I think he's talking about here. Tsonain. Tsonain would be cold water, I think. So ein mefigim osam b'tsonain would mean you can't basically cool it down with cold water, if that's what it means. I'm not sure. That's how Rashi will say. Okay, kadei lechasmon. So apparently, when you put cold water, maybe that's what happens. If it's hot and you suddenly pour cold water on it, like certain things, they take it from the fire, they put it in cold water to, like a horseshoe. Isn't that what they used to do with horseshoes?
Yeah.
But I thought that was just to cool it down. Maybe it also hardens it up. So maybe that's what it means. If it's a new oven and you're using it on Yom Tov, don't pour cold water on it. That'll have an effect of hardening it up. Maybe it's unlike a regular kli or ra'afim, that for them to get hardened is not just put them in the fire. Here, where you're cooking them with the fire, the whole oven is too big to be affected by the fire. But once it gets hot, if you pour cold water on it, it will have the effect of lechasman. Maybe that's why it's also not muksa, because you don't really have an isser of heating them up, because you're not going to have the same effect of hardening them up until if you try to pour cold water on it, then that will have the effect. But just heating them up as a regular oven, it won't have that effect for some reason. All right. let's see. The im.
Okay. If it's for baking, there is a mutter, or it's mutter.
Okay, so seemingly it's talking about the soning, but I don't know how that could be for the sake of cooking. Maybe you have to cool it down in order to cook again. Maybe in order to cook it with it, you have to cool it down a bit and then wait and then.
Oh, so if it gets too hot, it will burn, right?
Maybe, yeah. So if you're putting the cold water on it in order to harden it up, to sort of fix it up, that's usr. That would be like the isser of ra'afi.
They didn't have like ovens like we do, which control, you set it at a certain degree. And they probably heated it and cooled it and heated and cooled it, right?
Right, I guess maybe this is part of their control system. So if they're using it to cook, meaning they're using it to control the heat, then it's mutter, because that's part of the cooking on Yom Tov that you're allowed to do. But if it's in order to fix up the kli, to make it harder, to make it a harder oven, then that's the same problem as ra'afim, then it's asr. So it seems like an oven, even when you heat up an oven, and even if it gets pretty hot, it still doesn't have the same effect of lachasma until you apply the cold water. So that explains a few things. First of all, why it's not muksa. Because it's not like ra'afim that as soon as you use it, they're going to become hard. And it also explains why you're allowed to use them on Yom Tov. And you don't have a problem except for the water, and even then we let you do it if you have the right kavanah. Not to fix the oven up, but rather to just control the cooking of whatever you're trying to bake.
You're not fixing, you're just controlling?
In other words, you're not trying to fix the kli, you're trying to cook things properly, so by cooling it down at a certain point, you allow yourself to cook better. That gives you more control, the way Shabbatai is learning. And that's mutter to do that on Yom Tov, to cool it down in order to heat it up again and control the cooking. Alright, anyhow, shall we see the Rashis on this? Because a lot of it, we're guessing of the Pshat, but we're not quite sure of the Pshat.
So baking is mutter, right?
You're asking a question if baking is mutter on Yom Tov?
No, this is the sugo, yeah.
Wait, but is there really a question? Of course, if cooking is mutter, baking should be mutter.
So it wasn't in the shul afos harazeh mutter.
Huh?
It says in the shul afos harazeh mutter.
I think it's talking about the same thing we were saying a moment ago. You want to pour cold water on it, but if you're doing it for the sake of hardening l'chasman, which we said meant to harden it up, it's a new oven, you're trying to harden it up, then it's asr to put the cold water on it. And if you're doing it in order to cook better, because by putting the cold water on it, you control the heat, and you allow yourself to cook more accurately, then it's mutter. That's what Shabbatai was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to agree with him, but... It sounds like he's right. It sounds like it's a Marina's shot. Should we see the Rashis now? Or if there's any Rashis. I don't know if there's any Rashis. Looks like there are a few. Chadashim. It's the first really wide line in Rashi. So what is Rashi saying?
New ones.
No, the Gemora said new ones. What does Rashi say?
All the more so old ones.
Right. But all the more so what?
So included all types of kelim when you're allowed to take them into the chutzah.
Because we're talking about what? An oven.
And a kiryas.
Right. Kirayim are just a stove. It's like a kind of an oven. Just an oven, you have a chamber that it cooks on the inside. A stove, it cooks on the outside. Right?
Yes.
So Rashi's saying the fact that you can move them around and they're not muksa, it sounds like only the new ones. Because it says the new ones are not muksa. The new ones you can move around. Rashi's saying, does that mean the old ones you can't move around?
Old ones you could...
Rashi
Yes.
answers,
Yes.
of course, Kol Shekin you can move those around. Chiddush is that even new ones you can move around. Why is that a chiddush? Like we were saying before, if the ra'afim that are new I'm not allowed to cook on because it'll do a tikkun. Here also I might have thought it's muksa because any usage of this oven is going to be a tikkun. Turns out it's not a problem. Harehein k'kol ha'kelim hanitolim. They're like any other kli that what? That you're allowed to pick up and move on. Right. But Rashi says even the Shabbos. I don't know why Rashi brings in Shabbos. We already saw that we're talking about a Tosefta and Beitsa. Why does Rashi bring in Shabbos? I don't know. No, this is what Shabbatai said.
What did I say?
They're chazu, they are fitting. L'meisav, what's l'meisav? Like to make sit, right? Like, which means to place. What? Bigavaihu.
Both of them.
No. Bigavo. Bigo. What does that mean in Aramaic? Go. Bigo.
Together?
It's like betoch.
Within.
Within. Bigavaihu.
Within them.
Within them. Inside of them. Midi.
These.
No. Midi are things. Somethings. Things. So what does Rashi say? Even on Shabbos you can move the oven. Why? You're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, so why would you be allowed to move this oven around? Because of the Marina's pshat.
Because they're inside the cold.
He said his wife puts inside of her oven books.
Putting something inside of it.
That's what Rashi's saying over here. You know why they're not muksa? Why an oven is not muksa on Shabbos?
Putting something inside of it.
Because it's chazu, it's fitting.
Yeah.
L'meisav to put inside of them midi, something like books.
So it's like inanimate things like books?
Yeah.
We're talking about food.
Books, anything. Doesn't say what. Anything. Things. Midi. Things. Anything. I would say even like the Marinas books.
Mm-hmm.
Tell your wife she was mechavan to Rashi. Tell her your Rosh Yeshiva was excited because Rashi learned like her.
She said enough compliments this week.
I know. I'm trying to cheer her up. Tell her. Okay, so I understand what Rashi's saying, certainly based on what you said in the name of your wife, but I don't understand why Rashi wanted to make this Beitsa talk even on Shabbos, because we saw it's a Tosefta in Beitsa. Why would you learn that it's talking about Shabbos? Why did Rashi have to start discussing Shabbos and make it even mutter on Shabbos?
Or even more so.
Yeah, but we just saw that this Beitsa, the simple understanding is this talking about a Yom Tov. You can move it around because you can cook on Yom Tov. Maybe that's the problem that Rashi had. If it's talking about Yom Tov, that's Pashit. You can move an oven on Yom Tov. I learned the Chiddush was because it's even a new one that you might have had a problem that you're going to be lachasman by turning it on. No. Only by pouring the cold water you have a problem. I learned that was the Chiddush on Yom Tov. But Rashi seems to be saying that's not enough of a Chiddush, that an oven is not muksa on Yom Tov. Of course not muksa on Yom Tov. The Chiddush is even on Shabbos it's not muksa. So I think Rashi had to learn this talking about Shabbos in order that there should be a proper Chiddush.
How can it not be muktzah on Shabbos?
Because you can use it for things, like your wife. You can put stuff in it. That's what Rashi's saying. You can use it as a bookshelf. As a book case.
But you can't move bookcases around on Shabbos?
What?
You can move bookcases around on Shabbos?
This, if it was not attached to the wall, like, let's say, like these other aronot, you don't have to move that. Why not? If it's not attached to the wall, if it's a portable bookcase, why wouldn't you be allowed to move a portable bookcase? That's the whole point. It's dedicated for use of something that's permissible. Rashi is saying over here, even though normally an oven's used for other things, but you could do something. It's fitting. You could do something with it that's permissible. So that takes off the Isser Muksa. Because we know the Isser Muksa is always dependent on what it can at least potentially be used for.
Right.
So I don't care that it's really dedicated for cooking, since it could be used for other things, so therefore it makes it permissible. By the way, I think we have also an oven that we hardly use and we put stuff in it.
You know, there's little portable ovens that people use.
Yeah, sure. Like this one.
Yeah, those things. So you can move those around in Shabbat.
Apparently, that according to this Rashi, again, we wouldn't pass him from a Gemora. We'd have to look it up in the Mishnah Berurah to see if it was even la halacha. But I'm saying potentially, according to what we're learning so far, why not?
Well, if it was in the way, you certainly could use it in the way of something.
Yeah, because it's a kli shemalachta le'isser. It's not really muksa anyways. It's just a kli that's used for muksa for isser. So then you're always allowed to move that for the tzarich mukomo. Yeah, but Rashi is saying when you say nitali, like our Bryce is saying, nitali means you can move it.
Right.
It's like saying you can. No, it's not muksa. It's like waving a flag. It's not muksa. That's much better than a kli shemalachta le'isser that you can only move it for specific things, like you need the place or whatever. So it's not only that; it's more than that. It's really not muksa. So I think that bothered Rashi. Why should it not be muksa? So if it's talking about Yom Tov, Rashi learned it's not even a Chiddush. Of course you can move around an oven on Yom Tov. So Rashi had to learn it's going on Shabbos, where at least it is a Chiddush, and that is the Chiddush. That even though people don't normally use it for storing items, but you could, therefore it's not muksa. That's how Rashi seems to learn. In any event, the ein sachin osan shemen. You cannot anoint them with oil. Says Rashi, why would you want to do such a thing?
Lahachlikon. What? Sachin osan shemen.
It's, see where the Rashi is?
Yaakov?
So what's lahachlikan?
Chilek, to divide.
No, that's true, but lahachlik means to slip, to make slippery.
Oh, yes.
You listen to little children when they talk about things that are slippery, they say it's chaliki.
You see that on street songs sometimes.
Yeah. So Rashi's saying that might have been one of the reasons you want to put shemen on your oven is to make it slippery. In other words, lubricate it.
Why would you? Okay.
What?
Why would you want to do that?
Maybe it means on the inside, so that things don't stick to the oven.
Inside. Yeah. Okay. Well,
it's like spraying the oil, like there are these sprays. If you spray on the pan when you're cooking.
Yeah, canola.
Okay. And letzachzechan. What's letzachzech?
Tzachzecha means to
brush.
To brush up, right? I think it means to make it shine even, right? Okay, so that might be why you'd want to put on oil to do either make it slippery, lubricate it in other words, or tzachzechan to make it sort of shiny or whatever. Okay, now, because it also implies cleaning, I think. When you clean something, it's called your mitzachzeach, like you clean it up to the point where it's like shiny. So maybe when you put oil on a dirty surface, when you take the oil off, it takes the dirt with it. So it's a certain way of cleaning something that's hard to clean, I think. In any event,
also to clean, right? To brush.
To stop brushing teeth.
Yeah, that's how I think so. But I think they also use it, to imply clean. Anyhow, okay, so that's something else. And tashim, you can't be tashim. Rashi says tashim. He supplies a different word, shafim. That's also like buffing up, right?
Buffing up.
Rubbing. So, not allowed to buff it up.
Maybe I'm figuring or something.
We said it might mean weekend somehow. Rashi says, when would you want to do that?
Asaka.
Right? Hasek, lasik,
Light.
to light up, right? So it's like saying after they were lit up, right? You light up an oven, and obviously this is talking about Yom Tov already, not Shabbos. And you would want to put on cold water after you've lit the oven. You'd want to, but he said no. Ein mafigin hasekan b'tzama, right? Can't cool it down with cold water. Can't do it lechasman to harden up the ceramic, as Rashi has explained before, but he's now going to explain it regarding tzonin. She miskashin tzonin, because if you put on cold water, it will make it harden up.
Yeah.
And Rashi says all of these isurim that it's saying you can't do this, you can't do that, kulahu, because they're like fixing up the kli somehow, right? Anointing, this, that, and the other. They're making it a more perfect kind of a kli. Again, we're talking about a new oven, so in a new oven, these are minor adjustments you'd want to do to your new oven, and all of them Chazal say no, don't do it, because it's like a tikkun on this kli, which we won't allow on Yom Tov. Ve'im, last Rashi, and then we'll call it a day. If you're just trying to cool it down in order to bake, shehusku harbe, that it got lit up very much, like it got very hot maybe, and you're worried that it shouldn't burn, the pot shouldn't burn, therefore it's mutter. So it's exactly like Marina said.
What's hafat? Oh, cooking, the baking.
Which word?
Hafat.
Yeah.
So all this case will be Masaka Mana, right?
They were, but this last one is saying you can pour the cold water on the oven if it's basically, like we said before, to control the heat. It got too hot and you're worried that the bread that you put in there will burn. You can cool it down by pouring on cold water, even though it may have the same effect of fixing up and hardening up the oven, but it doesn't matter. We'll allow you to do it. Okay, shoyach.